Hello, everybody. If you're live, let's have a 5x5 in chat to see that we're all working on the microphones, and that will, for the people watching this back later, confuse them because we do this live on Space Coast Live. Not every Sunday, but when we've got a spare Sunday and there's not like a Starlink launch or there's something else happening at the Starbase where we have to cover that as well, we do a spare Sunday for a Shuttle Sunday. It used to be just X posts where I do a few photographs from L2. They were always cool, but I thought, hey, while we've got microphones and the ability to show the pictures on screen, we can actually do an hour show. And that's why we're going through the missions. We've started with STS-1 and we're going through the missions now. They're actually on the YouTube channel if you want to watch back under the Shuttle Sunday folder or channel area or whatever they call it. Playlist, that's it. Playlist is the word I was looking for. You can look back on these missions. And I tell you, by the time we get through about 20 missions worth, I reckon we'll have a nice little collection there. So it's well worth popping back and just using it as a resource, especially if you're at school and I see it a lot of times, people saying I use the old shuttle photographs as resources for my project. You have all my permission to do that. Use it as much as you want, because I think it's important to recognize the history as we're into this new era of exciting spaceflight. But enough of me prattling on. Let's introduce who I'm luckily got with me, which is Mr. Sawyer Rosenstein. Say hello, Sawyer.
Hello, Sawyer. You
Waiting
had
for
to
that.
know that was coming. How's it going, Chris?
Yeah, it's going very well. It's always a good Sunday when it's Shuttle Sunday. So these two missions we're going to do today is going to be STS-8 and STS-9. I've always remember missions and certain things from missions, but just going back and grabbing the photographs and video clips and things like that from these missions, you get reminded just how there's such a variation on the missions, especially in the early days of Spatial. You could see where it was trying to do what it promised, which was multiple different kind of missions and objectives, and trying that they failed, unfortunately, on the cadence where they were meant to be rapidly launching again and again. And of course, the processing between missions proved to be too much of a challenge, and we never got there. But they did keep the capability of doing various different missions, and I do love that. So let's go on to STS-8. Let's start with the pre-launch photographs. If I can see where I am here, let's have a look. Preparation. Let's bring up some photographs, because I think this one's iconic when I bring this one up. This was quite an interesting event before the launch when Challenger got to the pad. There was a lightning strike, and you can see how dramatic that was in this photograph here, which I always like to bring up because it just shows they did have a lightning protection system. You can see the pole there, but this one actually got a ground strike. So you can remember how serious this was? Anything in the documentation that suggested they really were concerned by it?
They were so concerned they launched a few hours later.
There we go. There we go.
Literally
Basically,
launched the same day as this picture was taken. There was obviously delay to the launch because of the thunderstorms, but yeah, they didn't seem that concerned by it.
it's kind of interesting because nowadays they would be. We've seen lightning strikes. I mean, it's Florida for a start. You're going to get lightning storms there. This is 39A. I've seen close by hits where they've not even got onto the pad, but they've been close by enough to get the detection, and they've really gone and reviewed it for the electrical systems. They tend to be always okay, by the way. I've never really known one where they've actually had to roll a vehicle back or anything like that because of concerns from a lightning strike. But this is obviously a very iconic picture, because this one is, I've seen this come up many times and have not named the mission. They've just used it because it's very visually stunning. But I agree. In fact, speaking of visually stunning, let's bring up the patch. The patch isn't. I'll say this, and I'll die on this hill, Sawyer. The old shuttle patches are where I've always kind of like said to Paulie when she's done our new Starship patches, these were when patches were really cool. They said a lot. There was things in the patches, the NRO patches for a start. They tell a story as well, but a secretive story. These are very kind of like, this is exactly what's happening.
Yeah, it's the little things in there again. Count the number of stars, and you'll figure out what mission number it is. There are 8 stars for STS-8.
Just a cool patch. I'll say this all the time. I brought this one up for you, Sawyer, because this is the crew.
Yeah.
Now, we'll talk about the iconic crew first later, but the cat. There we go. That cat looks like he doesn't want to be there. For a start. But that is a cool crew photograph. But of course, this was iconic because a certain astronaut was making a very notable entrance into this crew. Am I right? Sorry, how can I phrase that any better than that?
Yeah, Guy Bluford on the right there, being the first African American astronaut to fly into space.
Absolutely, and that was commanded by Richard Chilly, who's a name I recognise straight away all the time. It's
Uh-huh.
just, and also look at this, the
Yeah.
NASA worm logo. Come on, area boys and girls, NASA logo with the best one. I do love it. I'm sorry, but
As a
yeah, I
meatball
know.
fan, I gotta disagree.
Let's give him
Like,
a standalone picture because it was really kind of cool just to see this transition. The shuttle has a lot of history in being firsts for spaceflight. We can bring up many examples as we go through the missions, but this is just cool to see that this is the early '80s. Remember when there's no politically correct way of saying it, but it's just nice to see progress. Let's put it that way. I also like this patch as well. Look at this. This is the eyes on the left-hand side, and then the frowny look. Do you know the story behind this? Because I've searched and searched and searched, and I can't find the story behind it.
I'll be honest, the first time I've seen this patch, so no, I
There
have
we
no
go.
idea.
I have asked still shuttle engineers. We've got a lot of them in L2, and they bring up answers. I tend to go back as far as shuttle on Slick 6 at California in Vandenberg, and they've got stories galore about that. But I went back on this patch and I asked them a story, and we only got various kind of like, I think it could be. And I don't want to put anything out there on the internet which might be incorrect, sir. But it's just one of the fun patches they used. I just like bringing it up. Right, let's look at some nice, cool shuttle photographs. There we are, coming out of the OPF, which is Orbiter Processing Facility, for those who are not sure of the old acronyms for shuttle. There were three of them in the end, and they've all been converted since. They're now we're talking about, and one of them, Starliner. That's where
Yeah,
Leopold's been converted.
I think they call it the C3PF now.
Yeah, I keep wanting to keep saying C3PO, but it's not, is it? Look, we
Well,
should
it's
have
better
E.
than the also with Starliner. I mean, the issue that they had the other day with the doghouse was the P2D2. So you had the P2D2 issue that they didn't catch in the C3PF. Tell me that's not confusing for Star Wars fans.
Indeed. By the way, I didn't realize when I actually got this picture in the folder, but we should bring AJ onto this at some point because he'll I did this with an old I think it was an Atlas launch where there was all the old cars, and I said to EJ
Uh,
on a tweet, I said I can challenge you to name the cars, and he went through them one by one. It was incredible. It was like a 1 hour stream on his Twitch channel, and he was just going through them one by one and actually naming them. And it wasn't the greatest photograph ever. It was a bit like this quality. And I bet he could name all these cars here as well. In fact, I'll hold that back and I'll ping him later and say, "Hey Jay, here's a challenge for his loads of old cars from the
I bet
'80s."
you he'll get it.
Oh, he will. No, he will. He's amazing knowledge on that.
And then have some random fact about Challenger on there too.
He will. Yes, nice little reflection shot. There's the photographs from back. This is like what we're talking about now, nearly 40 years. It really is really cool. These would pass a sniff test today, as I could say. Really nice. And then the crew were there at the pad, which was again that looks like it could have been a year ago. It's not 39A. I know it's changed since with SpaceX taking over 39A, but this view to me is always iconic because the rotating service structure. It's just something I'm always used to seeing. It's still a little bit not modified yet. I always look for the arm with the beanie cap on the end, and it's still not
Yeah.
there yet because you got the beanie cap there, and you got this big rotating arm. This is back in the conversion between Saturn and Shuttle, and it did convert a lot more since. But then since they've taken down this rotating service structure because SpaceX didn't need it, and SpaceX have just the tower is still the same now. The fixed
Yeah.
service structure is still the same as you see today at 39A, which is
Also,
always really incredible. Yes.
gives you a great idea of the height difference between Apollo and Shuttle you're talking about there too, of that swing arm all the way at the top versus where the beanie cap ends up being later on slightly lower down right at the top of the external tank.
Absolutely. Launch photographs. I've got a video to play, but I'm just going to go through some photographs, go to the video. I mean, back to the photographs to finish this one, but look at these photographs. These are really cool. There's like a reflection shot going on here. I don't know what is going on there. I don't know if they've been playing with it. There's another photograph I'll bring up later, which no one can work out. We could do with Jack on it because we just don't know how they did it. But this is a lovely streak shot. And the streak shots are kind of like our staple now with Falcon 9 Starlink launches, aren't they, Sawyer? So this is a really cool shot.
Yeah, I have one from the last launch actually that I took from my backyard, but this
I
was
guarantee I
the
retweeted it.
this was the first night launch of the Space Shuttle program and the first night launch in general for NASA since Apollo 17.
Wow. Of course. Again, this is what we do. We go back. You can be a fan of Shuttle, you could know your Shuttle history. I guarantee there's not one person who knows everything. And you basically, that's why it's great having Sawyer on here because just you find things. And that's what I love about Shuttle. There's so much history in Shuttle, 30-year program. You can never get bored going back and looking back. You never go back and think, I knew everything about that mission. You find things all the time. And I really love that about the Space Shuttle program.
Yeah, also
Right.
the fun fact of with it being the first shuttle night launch, they weren't exactly sure of how they were going to be able to handle night vision essentially with everything in the shuttle and going on externally around them. So they originally had, I believe, trained with like night vision goggles and all these fancy things until they finally realized that SRBs are just so bright that they didn't need it because it's going to basically turn it into daylight anyway at that point.
You know what? I think that's actually a reference in the video I'll be showing in a minute, which is really kind of cool little segue there.
I mean, I
If I
totally
thought-
planned that, of course.
Yeah, yeah, no, you've not. So he's not seen the video I've got
I have
lined up.
not.
So he's come up with that himself. There we go. Let's look at more launch photographs because you never go wrong with launch photographs. Let's face it, really is cool. And there you can see a good
Oh.
example of how the SRBs light up the area. I mean, I've seen many a kind of like camcorder from the viewing public where it
Mhm.
is pitch black and then it just turns to day. It really is amazing, and that's from like 12 miles away
Yeah, my
from the
first ever
causeways and what have you.
launch was STS-130, which was a night launch. So it was a shuttle launch at night. As many night launches as I've seen, the only thing that came close was SLS because it also had the SRBs. But the way that the shuttle SRBs lit up that sky was unreal.
There you go. That's a good example. There's a good example there where it's only just launched and you can see it's already lit up the VAB area, the KSC, the industrial park. Is it there or what have you? It really
Mhm.
is impressive. There's a turn basin, isn't it? I'm going to bring this up
Um,
because we are. Hang on, I'll
yeah,
zoom in. That's the turn basin, right?
yes, it is.
There we go.
I
We
believe.
were
Yeah.
looking at just live today with the tower sections and the chopsticks and what have you. They're going to head out to Starbase, and that is where they are now. They're out right down here at the turn basin where the dock is, and then the barge can. That's why they call it a turn basin because when they brought the external tanks and the core stages, in SLS's case, they're big barges and they tend to do a little pirouette, and that's why it is a turn basin. And then it'll go down here. Is it the Banana River? Is that the Banana River there, or is it further along? Sorry, you know
Um,
the area.
I believe that's the Banana River. The Indian River, I think, is the other way. So that I believe would be the. Well, I mean, that's just a little small narrow way. I'm not sure if that's the actual
Ah,
river
right.
beyond that. I think that may just lead out to the Atlantic.
Very
I'm
good.
trying to recall. I'm sure more people know geography better than I do. We need Mr. Map, but you can see you can actually see the light of the countdown clock in that if you swing over to the right
Oh,
by the water. Uh,
oh,
yeah,
wow.
see that super bright light? That's the countdown clock.
That is crazy. That, in fact, this is great because you get your bearings. You can see where you've what everyone's watched NASA TV launches, and they'll see the countdown clock, which is it used to be the big LED lights, isn't it? Now it's like a TV screen. But
Yeah.
it really is impressive to sort of like get your bearings here because you can think, oh, that's where people were standing at the countdown clock during this launch. VAB's over here, the OPS are over here, and in this case now it's mobile launcher two being built over here. So
Uh
yeah, it's
huh.
really cool. We
Yeah,
get to
fun
do,
fact, the countdown clock was loud. The
was it?
original countdown clock, you could hear like the gears and the mechanisms and things essentially churning inside of it. This was pre-LED bulbs in there too. So
Oh,
it that's the one thing I remember about the old countdown clock, which I got to see for 135. It was just next to it going, thing is loud.
no
The
one's
one
ever
at the
told me that.
visitor complex now, they've replaced it with LED bulbs, so it's quieter, but it's weird.
No one's ever told me that story before.
Yeah.
In all the years I've been doing this, no one's ever told me that story before. That's amazing. So yeah, it was the old big. I mean, it is iconic. I've got lots of really. I'll be showing them on future Shuttle Sundays. So don't worry, I'm not hiding his back and saying I've seen this cool thing. You're not going to see it. You will see it on future Shuttle Sundays. The clock is just like with the audio of the countdown as well. It's like tick,
Mhm.
tick, tick, and then everything lights up. Oh,
It's there's
such a
something
cool.
iconic. That was one of the first things I did when I made it to the press site for the first time for STS-135 was get to the countdown clock and see that view. I feel like I could just say that view and you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Absolutely. Westy the third in chat. I'm reading chat at the same time. This is not one of those live streams where we're like, we'll take questions. Absolutely. If you got any questions, do it on a space flight. I'll go in a panel. So by all means, ask questions. But I'm going to read chat live because it's not like a busy 100,000 people in a live stream thing. It just goes, Westy the third goes, even nice, even Chris B is learning. I tell you one thing, Westy, I'm learning all the time. I don't think I'll ever stop learning. And I don't want to get in that position where I'll stop learning. That'd be quite boring, wouldn't it? It's just exciting to learn stuff, and I love learning with it. So that's a fun thing. This is the photograph that's baffled everyone. Now, Sawyer, you're good with cameras. What the heck's going on here?
Uh, Holy. All right, let me full screen this a second here
Yeah,
on my end because I gotta take a closer look at this.
it's like
Um,
some lens flare's gone wrong, and it's just come out really amazing. It's the launch. It's definitely the launch. It's not like CGI or anything. Well, it's the 80s for a start, but it's just like something has gone weird with the camera, but it got saved and was uploaded to L2.
you can see the
So
dirt on the film. um, yeah,
it's
that's. I feel like that has to almost be above a cloud layer.
yeah, it's like
This has to
almost
be
like a.
taken from the air. It looks like.
It looks like it's some WB-57 shot, if there's such a thing from that mission, that's gone wrong, but it's come out amazing. Because is that the
I,
moon? Is that the moon? What is going on
I,
there?
it looks like it
Chat.
might be, but I don't think it is. It must be
No, it can't be.
some issue with the lens, some either a flare or again, it could be a piece of dirt or something that
Yeah,
reflected off the lens, off the film there. Huh?
'cause you can
Like you were
make out
saying
the
about learning
shuttle.
something new.
Yeah,
There
you can
you
make
go.
look. You can make out the shuttle. You can make out the shuttle. That's obviously the SRB plume. Chat. Have you got any ideas? Any photographers in here who's got any ideas what's going on with this photograph? Because I've asked in L2, and we had various kind of like theories, but no one knew for sure. And we can't find the history behind the photograph. We know it was scanned to us. It was scanned to us and donated as part of an upload. Um, so it's definitely been taken and put in a collection somewhere and then given to us. But no one's got any details, and chat's got no idea either. It's fun though because it is so beautiful. I
That's
do like that. I would have that on my wall. Adrian?
yeah, that's one of those things that honestly only film can capture. As much as
Yeah,
I love digital and the fact that you see the photo instantly and we can just pop it right on X and socials and all of that. There's just something about the art of taking shuttle photography with film like this that's unbelievable.
absolutely. Now, I don't know if I'm going to do the mission photographs or do the video first. I think I'll just whiz through the photographs and then we'll do the video because the video, and I'll pause it for landing. So I'll do some like landing photographs and landing video and we'll finish this mission off. But yeah, there's lots going on in this mission. In fact, we should probably talk about that, Sawyer. The
Oh yeah,
primary
that
objectives of this mission. It's Insat 1B, isn't it?
it is. Actually, there were originally supposed to be two main payloads on board this mission. It was
Mm.
supposed to be Insat 1B and Tidris B as well.
Oh.
So, after the launch of Tidris A, there they had the issue with the IUS, the inertial upper stage. So they decided that they needed to kind of redesign all of that, and Tidris B was removed from the manifest and instead placed on, unfortunately, STS-51L. But in the meantime, though, they still put in a mass simulator that would be kind of representing where that payload was as a way for them to test out, as you were just highlighting, the Canadarm.
Yeah. Nice little
And
view of the
then,
camera. There's lots of obviously experiments as well on board. You can see the crew with all the instrumentation all over them and doing a lot of work in the mid deck. There's the this happened quite a lot as well. So there's like from their schools, they're either Navy or they're Army or things like that. I think this lot were all Navy because the
yeah,
Navy beat Army, and that's the American football game, isn't it? The American football games play Army versus Navy, I think.
every year it's Army
Yeah,
versus Navy, but then there's also that friendly rivalry with Army and Navy and Air Force. So, yeah, you'll see that a lot among the astronauts, and that continues to this day. That I mean, all I can think. Remember Gemini 6 and 7, the rendezvous
mm,
there. They had the Go Army beat Navy in the
that's
window.
right. Keeping a tradition. I wonder if we'll see that. I think we've seen very small versions of it, but maybe on the crewed missions for Dragon, we might start seeing it on the ISS a bit more because you get different crews going up. The first postcards from space before Blue Origin thought about it. There we go.
Yeah, I believe they had about 200,000 of them. There were, I think they were like $9 stamps, though. They were expensive stamps at the
Wow.
time because they were express stamps on them, but those were later sold at auction and the proceeds were split between NASA and the Postal Service.
Nice. Look at this. Lovely glove. In fact, the video I'll be playing in a very short moment will be it will explain quite a lot of this because again, this is the early days of Space Shuttle. This is STS-8. This is really early days. So they are still learning. The test flights were STS-1 to STS-4, but they were still learning all the way through. In fact, they were learning right to the end, let's face it. But these were like a lot of DTOs, they call them, detailed test objectives, where they would basically just add things to the mission along with the primary objectives of satellite deploys and what have you. They would add lots of little. Didn't have to complete them all, but if they could, it was like really kind of bonus points for the mission.
Yeah, one of the biggest ones actually on this one was, even though it didn't launch Tidris B, was testing out the Tidris network and realizing, hey, we got a lot of work to do still on it. There was a lot of issues with some of the ground stations. I believe one of them in White Sands was causing problems. So a lot of this mission was just testing out communications via Tidris.
And this looks like Insat 1B.
That is Insat 1B for sure,
Yep.
with the PAM-D at the bottom there.
There you go. I'll bring it up. There we go. That's what they did. I mean, we've mentioned this before on a previous shuttle Sunday that they would go into low Earth orbit because that's where the space shuttle went. It didn't go anywhere else. It wasn't really able to do that. And then if you're looking at these satellites here, they couldn't be deployed. They couldn't survive in low Earth orbit. That was not their mission. So they would use these little motors. I think they were the solid motors.
They were.
Yeah, little solid motor on the bottom there. So basically pop out of the cargo bay like this. The shuttle would get its distance and then it would fire up that motor, and that would be like almost like the kick stage you see in Rocket Lab launches, where the job's being done by the carrier spacecraft, the first and second stage in the case of Rocket Lab, and the kick stage is what takes it to its final orbit. So that was literally the version of that. They took up the kick stage in the payload bay with the satellite as well. Lots of stories to come on that as well as the Centaur ones and what have to come. They'll be long stories. But
Yeah,
those are the
send
pictures
that to
we got
someone
from
named
there.
Pam and tell them they rock it. Which, by the way, it just stands for, I believe it was Payload Assist Module,
Yes,
if I recall. Yeah.
yes. Right, this is where we've got Jay in the background helping us out with the technical side of this. So thank you to Jay in advance. This is where we test Jay's skills on making sure audio and video comes through. So by all means, chat. Let me know if this audio comes through, if it's too loud, too quiet, or whatever. Ready? Here we go.
There's a vehicle on the pad the night of the launch. There's a vehicle on the pad the night of the launch. Unfortunately, you can't see the lightning and the rain. As we depart our quarters, heading out to the pad, once again, it doesn't show, but it was raining cats and dogs. And I think each of us in the crew were not real confident that we were going to get off. Here's a picture in the cockpit before liftoff. That's looking over Richard's shoulder. And we got off a little bit late, but we did get the go. And the three main engines started just fine and were running very smoothly. When it was a little bit of vibration in the cockpit, the SRBs lit off and it became very bright, as you can see right here. It was just like day in the cockpit. And all during first stage, we didn't need lights in the cockpit. It was plenty bright. The vibration was pretty much like other crews have explained in the cockpit. During first stage, we were shaking around a little bit, but nothing you couldn't handle. And from reports that people on the ground, they got a pretty spectacular show. From inside the cockpit looking out, it looked like you kind of expect it to look like at the top of this. You were looking into a cloud with a bright light. I mean, it was just a glow all around the cockpit. And once we got up away from the ground a little bit, you couldn't see the ground anymore, and it just looked like you were in the middle of a glowing ball.
Which we were.
Which we were. You can see out the windows there. That's a sort of a representation. Here we're going through, well, you just went through the cloud deck there, which kind of reflected a little more light back in the cockpit now. This is just going through the cloud deck at about 20,000 feet. You can see the vibration isn't too bad, and we're all in there busily checking our instruments, being sure everything is running properly. The next scene you'll see from the cockpit is when the solid rocket boosters departed, and that was really a bright flash. And after that, there wasn't as much flashing or brightness in the cockpit until I mean, the external tank. There's the SEP with the SRBs. That's when those rockets push it away and it really gets bright.
Okay, once we got on orbit, the view from space was just spectacular, and this is just an indication of that just from the cockpit. One of the objectives of our mission was to deploy the INSAT satellite, and this is the cockpit arrangement associated with deploying the satellite. In this particular view, Dan is actually operating the 16 millimeter camera, panning the cockpit. You can see Dick over there on the left. He's sort of supervising the operation. There's Dale. He's going to be handling the cameras and the switches. And I'm working from the commander's seat up front, sending out commands through keyboard and talking to the PAM and a satellite through CRT display. You can see, as I said, that was basically our arrangement. Our Dan, there were very few vibrations of any sort. There's a picture of the INSAT actually being deployed from the spacecraft. You can see that the deploy went very smoothly. At the moment of deploy, there was a large thump, and as I said, the spacecraft was deployed very smoothly, and there was no vibrations or no precession of the satellite as it left the.
This is a view in the aft flight deck. I'm over at the arm station, and Richard's to the left to fly the vehicle. Here you can see the arm going in towards grapple fixture number 5. Remember, that's the one on the front of the PFTA. You can see here it looks like we're losing the view of the arm as it goes behind the DFI pallet in the front. However, from the cockpit, that was a very comfortable thing to do, and it never appeared to us that we were getting close to contact. This is lifting the PFTA out in direct mode, where I'm moving one joint at a time, again on grapple fixture 5. And here's a shot with grapple fixture 2. A lot of the tests were putting the arm and the PFTA up in various configurations and then putting pulses into the orbiter or into the arm and seeing what the relative motions were between the two. So we did on flight day 5 something that surprised us all as far as the views go, and that is a look at the underside of the vehicle. This task has always been in our repertoire. It's been in the checklist, but we've never had to use it. Dick worked on it some in STS-2 in anticipation of being able to look at tile. Here you can see the view of the underside is extremely clear. And again, these are 16 millimeter movies made off the TV film, so the TV is really much better than this. Here we zoom in, I think, on one of the elevons. This is the port elevon, which is down a little bit, and you can see that with the real VTR film, you're almost able to make out numbers on individual tiles. We're really surprised at the great view that we got with this technique. This series, you can see some vernier jets firing in the back of the vehicle, and after the next one, watch how the vernier jet firings excite the glow around the ohm spot. You can see it there. It gets very bright for a few seconds and then slowly fades away. But even at its dimmest, you can see that you can still see the glow, and it was even more apparent to us with our eyeballs. Here we're setting up for an on-orbit ohms burn. We're getting some things ready in the mid-deck. There's the ohms engines firing out the back, and now watch what happens in the mid-deck. That's 1/16 of a G. Each of the ohms engines is 1 foot per second squared for a total of 2 feet per second squared, and that 1/16 of a G felt like a lot to us after being up there for 3 or 4 days. And you can see the acceleration on the tape. It keeps wanting to go back towards the aft bulkhead because we're accelerating forward towards the left of the screen.
Orbit part of the film. Now we're going to.
Right, so that was. I wanted to go to the end because I didn't realize it was that far in the video, but the great thing with the ohms burn, where they all get pushed back on the mid deck, I know that's been done a few times, and I really enjoyed it. And the ISS does it as well during some burns because they can actually just see people moving with the direction of the thrust. Really cool. By the way, we got rudely interrupted by a second chopstick arriving at KSC. So
2 different arms, cannon arm and chopstick arm.
Oh, it's all working out. But yeah, I mean, if someone in the background like Gav can actually, if he's listening, can do a tweet for that, then it'd be quite fun because then we'll have people coming in confused to be like, Chopstick, but what the heck's a Shuttle doing on the left-hand side? What's going on? I don't understand. But yeah, we got to the landing part, so I wanted to pause it there and bring up some landing photographs because we've got some lovely photographs of the night landing as well. Look at this.
By the way, also
This,
just one thing worth pointing out while we were talking about it before we
yeah,
get to the landing. They mentioned a couple things. The DTI, which was out there, and they originally had that, I believe, on the earlier missions, just to kind of test prove some things, and ended up using it as a little science rack that hung out inside the payload bay. And yeah, as you saw, they were doing all the different methods with the robotic arm, with since they didn't have Teachers B, with that thing that kind of looked a bit like something else from Star Wars that they were testing the different grapple fixtures on. Anyway, the
very good.
first night landing of the space shuttle program.
Look at this. Really nice photograph, this. I know it's not the best quality, but it's just, I do like that because it just gives you an idea of the engine on the back, which obviously are not being used for landing. Coming back in. We've got another photograph here. There we go. Nice little silhouette as
Also,
it
I love
comes.
how you could see just the brightness of the lights, because the shuttle, unlike normal airplanes, doesn't have landing lights, because they couldn't come up with ones that would survive re-entry. So instead of being able to have the lights from under the shuttle, they had to have the crazy, ridiculous number of lights at Edwards.
Yep. Awesome stuff. Right. Let's go back to the video because we've got a bit more of the video to go. Not a lot. And then we'll get to the landing part, which is this. So we've only got a bit to go, but it's a good, cool landing video.
Talk briefly about the entry and landing. This is 16 millimeter photography taken by Dale of the front windows. Again, you can see the glow, which now is orange in color. And as we described before, these are the pulses taken by Dale by holding a camera and looking aft and above his head, above the tail. We have, and this is real time, incidentally. This pulsing is happening at the frequency that you're seeing it. It is not understood at the moment. We've shown it to the thermal folks, and it's going to take a little thinking to describe what it is that we're seeing. This is probably a little long for the press conference. We left this entire sequence in so that our engineering friends could take a look at it. Panning of the cockpit with the glow. As it started out changing colors, up high it was sort of a salmon color and finally got white hot. This is the landing as seen through an infrared camera that was out at Edwards, transported down there from the Navy Weapons Center at China Lake. You'll notice it's infrared, so actually the vehicle was not visible to anybody that was there at this point. The brighter areas are the hottest, and so you can see the red hot or white hot nose cone there. And if you look carefully, you can see that the window areas are also hotter. It's so good that you see the gear deployment, and you can see that black area are actually the cold rubber main tires. And we defy Hollywood to match this sequence. This is the Challenger coming in for landing on runway 22 at Edwards. You'll see us kicking up a little bit of dust off the runway surface. There's a touchdown, which was fairly smooth, and all I can say for the landing is my hat is off to the people that helped us develop the heads-up display and the night lighting system, and to the great work that was in support for the last year, generally in the middle of the night, to the folks out in our shuttle training aircraft that provided Dan and me with the training that it took to accomplish this first night landing. Finally, at the end, here's the crew holding on for dear life to the rails to make sure they don't embarrass themselves walking down these steps, but actually by now, everybody was readapting quickly to 1G. And I hope this movie portrays to you the fact that we had a lot of fun on the flight, because if it does, it was certainly accurate.
There we go. It's a cool video. Longer than I thought it was, actually, to be fair, but it really was a nice thing because you're starting to see now the re-entry footage from on board. They're starting to make a big deal out of that because they're still learning about what they're seeing. And it is kind of a synergy with what's going on today with what we might see from the outside, the external cameras from Starship, which would be a first time ever, where we'll actually start seeing potentially all the way through re-entry via the Starlink downlink and the fact that it's just a bigger vehicle. Starship is bigger than Shuttle. So there's more mass area and what have you. Land.
That
But yeah,
that
it's
is very true.
very true.
Uh,
Yes, I was
yeah, I was
tripping
just
over words a little
explaining
bit there.
before we went on the air, like the parts that are rolling out there. I was right next to the tower segment yesterday, and the thing is massive, and that was one of 9 segments. And compare that to shuttle going by, and you really get that size comparison, even just with the pictures next to each other.
The cool thing is, Gav has referenced the second chopstick going to the turn-based area with a link to this. We're actually live talking about Shuttle at the time, so we're going to have some confused people arriving very shortly,
Yeah.
thanks to people looking for chopsticks and going, "Yeah, there's a chopstick. Well, what the heck's going on the right-hand side?" Well, what's going on the right-hand side is we're moving on to STS-9. That's what we're doing.
Actually, before we do, something that will
Yes.
lead us into STS-9, because it does have some significance in it, is after the post flight, when they were doing the analysis of, there were actually not that many issues with the vehicle in flight, but then they got back the SRBs after they splashed down and Freedom Star and Liberty Star bring them back. So on the nozzles of the SRBs, they had this resin lining that was meant to burn away. It was about 8 centimeters thick, and they figured that during firing, obviously some of it's going to burn away. Uh, so they figured that it would burn away at most to half thickness, so 4 centimeters. When they saw the leftmost booster come back, the nozzle had a half a centimeter of resin left. When they figured there should be about 4 centimeters left. Yeah, some people figured they were maybe less than 15 seconds away from an entire burn through that would have destroyed the nozzle. They didn't think much of it until obviously SRB issues became apparent following 51L, but it almost became a disaster as they later found out with that solid rocket booster.
There we go. I think that might be an entrance to the shuttle near misses that I think we're planning to do a video on in a not too distant future, because obviously there's a lot going on with what we've been talking about as far as close calls with the space shuttle program. I say quite jovially, but I do not mean it jovially because it was a very serious issue.
Right, and they actually ended up having delays to the next mission because of SRB's nozzle issues, and that was STS-9.
Absolutely. Right, let's do a quick some thanks. Chris Yukin became a Capcom member, so you're on our Discord now. Chris, welcome. Thank you for your support. And RC Horseman, who supports us all the time, give the Red Team membership. I'll make sure I read them out because this is a live show. People watching it back, I guarantee more people watch it back just from the views I've seen. We'll be confused why I'm reading out things like that, but we do a live show on the Space Coast Live channel at this time on occasional Sundays. So if you're thinking, oh, I would have watched it live if I knew about that, just keep an eye out for the pinned comment. You can see the pinned comment on top of this one right now, saying Shuttle Sunday to 3 p.m. Eastern, and that's what we do. So you can watch it live, but we also record it. So people watching back on the recording probably confused by me reading out super chats. It's just because it's live right now. So thank you for your support. A few more questions before we go on to STS-9, by the way, Sawyer. Where did the clock go? We're talking about the old countdown clock. Do you know where it went?
Visitor complex is there, but obviously they upgraded it a bit as they got rid of the regular light bulbs and replaced them with LEDs. The base is still there. They just gutted the mechanics of it to allow it now to work with the LCD screens that's out there.
Very good. Someone called Kevin Michael Reed says, "Oh no, it's Shuttle Sunday and I forgot. I'm here now. You can start over. We got to start over again. Sorry, we got to start again from the start." Or Mr. Kevin Michael Reed could just rewind the tape, if there's such a thing. 30 minutes to the start of the show, so we don't have to start over again. You can listen back from the start. Yes, welcome, Kevin. Thank you for joining us. Matt, one of our regulars. Is it possible the SRB would get ignited by a lightning strike? That lightning strike.
No. All of the firing mechanisms and everything on that were internal. There was extra safety features related to that, so no, there was no risk of the lightning actually igniting inside it. Plus, you had that external metal coating on the SRB cases, and these were the thicker SRB cases too. They ended up switching to slightly thinner ones, starting, I believe, with STS-41B.
There we go. Very good. A few more questions, but we'll hold them back for this mission because they're all relevant to Shuttle in general. Let's go on to STS-9. This was Challenger's return. Columbia's return. We saw the previous mission with Challenger because Challenger had taken over the mantle while Columbia was being converted to host this big thing in the back, which is Spacelab. So this is the first Spacelab mission. This is where Shuttle was really probably stretching its wings, because if you think about it, it is a very large vehicle. But normally, you'd only have crew in this area here. If you can see where my little cursor is moving on the screen, that would be the flight deck and the mid deck. But with the Spacelab in the back, they could use this transfer pole and use basically like a small, like a module on the ISS, basically. To put it in blunt terms, it literally was like a module on the ISS, but in the cargo bay of the space shuttle. And this is where ESA got involved as well, because it's all cooperation. It really was quite interesting. We've got a lot of patches. I'm going to show these patches. that is kind of like Men at Work kind of thing. I don't know what's going on there. This patch, it looks like an ESA one, because you can see it's that kind of design. But this is where they did a lot of work on making sure this is the patch. This is a beautiful patch. Again, a beautiful patch.
Oh,
It really is.
yeah, you got the Spacelab in there. Again, 9 stars. Also notice the shape of the shuttle trail is a 9.
There we go. It's just, they're just brilliant. And I do love, I've said it before, but at the start of the show, how Pauline has taken that kind of like, let's make the patch relevant, rather than sort of like using a generic sort of like picture of a Starship launch and then adding a different number to it each time, which might become the case when they start launching every week. But for now, when they're doing objectives, the patch reflects the objective, the main objective. And that's where we're with Flight 4 patches and Flight 5. I've seen in draft leaking time. I've seen the patch 5. It is amazing. It is probably going to be the best one. Let's hope everything goes right for Flight 4 though, first and foremost. Right, let's go through
I
some...
want a Starlink 6-64 patch.
Oh, can you imagine? Starlink patch, but like we need a team of people, and there's no way we could get them turned around from the patch factory, or what they call it. So it just won't work at all. There's no solution to that, and I don't think they sell that many. Oh, I got the Starlink 644. You know what? You know,
Collector's edition.
who stands out here the most for you? Sorry, come on.
I mean, it's obvious the man in the middle right there, John Young, on
I'm all
his
zooming in.
what would be his final flight. And if I recall, he flew on 2 missions of all the programs he flew in, 2 Gemini, 2 Apollo, and 2 Shuttle.
Yeah,
And
such. I mean, I've
became
seen a
the
pic.
first person ever to fly on the same spacecraft twice.
I've seen a picture of him, Gemini, I think it was, and he had that kind of like you hear the phrase "steely-eyed missile man," which usually works for not just astronauts but also for controllers and people like that, people who do well on missions. His expression, I will find it one day and put it into chat. It just said to me everything that it's probably the one that stuck out the most for me as like, that's an astronaut. If I had a friend come around who has no interest in spaceflight whatsoever and starts asking me questions and says, well, what's astronauts like, I would bring up that picture of John Young and say that's an astronaut, because everything about that photograph is astronaut to me. I will find it and put it in chat after the end of Shuttle Sunday. Trust me on this one, because it's such a good photograph. But yeah, that's why he's always stuck with me. And of course, STS-1. I mean, come on, let's not forget it. It really, what a person, what a human being. All those accomplishments. It's really, really cool. Right, moving through the photographs here, because there's a lot of pre-launch photographs here where they are developing, building, and installing Spacelab, which is for the first time in a shuttle. So it's really cool. Look at this. This is an old one of our ESA friends sent me some really old photos of them building it.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just like, it looks nothing like it yet, because it's just going for the structures. You got the people. By the way, great mustache. What a
Oh my
mustache.
gosh,
That
yes.
is handlebars. Wonderful work there. I wish I could grow a mustache myself, because I would grow one like that. And then we've got the I say renders, it were drawings, obviously, back in those days of just what it was like. And you can imagine people, this is probably pre-shuttle as well, when these drawings came out for the objectives of the shuttle program once it got going. You could probably imagine going, wow, this massive space plane can also carry this. You can see where some of the excitement would have come from, because that is literally pre-ISS. This is like the version of Skylab where they had it mobile in the back of a space shuttle. I can imagine some excitement about that. I know a lot of disappointment that Apollo didn't carry on and probably go on to the Mars missions, and rightly so, because that should have been the path. But at least the shuttle did bring something else to the table, as much as it's probably the wrong step to make, if I can put it that way, if I can phrase it carefully. You can see the Skylab people there working at Spacelab. So I told you, Sawyer, I'd
Yes.
get the two. Yeah,
Well, like I was saying, it's also tricky because you have Owen Garriott, who flew on Skylab,
yeah.
flying on the first Spacelab mission too.
Oh dearie me. Yeah, these are like photographs no one's seen before. By the way, these are just like an ESA friend who basically put them into all two for us, and just historic. We're going back many years. That looks like it could have been taken like a week ago. It really is many years ago.
Oh, that wiring.
This I like. This is just basically it's relevant to the mission, but it also covers lots of things to do with the special. Anyway, so let's bring it up here. So I'm going to see where we can start from the start. So we got the weird how it's designed here. Here we go. So we got all this is basically Skylab's development and installation into the shuttle, and then you get to the OPF, you get to where it goes to VAB, it goes to the launch site, then you got the launch phase, you got the return phase. Really nice little graphic here, which just goes through all the objectives. It's weirdly put, by the way, because I was starting at the bottom there. I just realised you go halfway through the middle, but it really is mission phases. There we go. It's really cool. I like that. I just basically grabbed it from the STS-9 collection.
I like that.
This
Also
is
interesting that again, like the first satellite from STS-8, I believe, was installed out at the pad, and this was installed in the OPF.
oh, nice little Sawyer fact there.
Yeah,
Look at
which
this.
makes sense considering that it was literally linked to the airlock.
Look what this astronaut's doing. What's this? He's wearing the first VR headset ever seen in the world. Again. This is what these missions were about. It was about learning. It was a lot of medical. There's a lot of experiments. It was basically trying to utilize the fact that we're in microgravity to conduct things you can't do on Earth, not at this scale at very least. And you'll
Yep.
see lots of little Easter eggs here. Look at this little hatch here, where they could literally deploy payloads from the lab up this airlock into space while they're on the orbit. It was really quite a cool system.
Wow. Yeah, one of the big things that they were trying to deal with in these early missions was space adaptation sickness, aka getting up into space and throwing up, and couldn't figure out exactly why that happened to some people and not everyone. So that was one of the big things they were trying to figure out in the early shuttle missions.
I think that might be in the video. Not the actual throwing up, by the way. So don't worry,
Hope
boys and
not.
girls. I'm not gonna show any vomiting on screen. But it really is really interesting what they did here. Again, I've got more of these. This is good because it goes back to what I was saying. Normally, bring it over. This to the left is where the crew would go. You got the flight deck here. You got the mid deck there. So that is basically a space shuttle for the humans, the pressurized volume for the crew. That was it. Nothing else. The rest was like a truck, like a trailer on the back of a lorry. A lorry. That might not translate to the Americans. The back of a truck. Let's just say truck. But with the lab, you had all this as well now. So it really changed the game as far as what a crew could do and the amount of space to work in. And the amount of experiments they could carry up as well, because the mid-deck lockers are only limited to that amount of space there. So you had all this capacity added to it. It was really, I can imagine people being excited about it back in the day, and
It
that's
actually
why
allowed them
it's
to have little sleeping bunks finally.
yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, this is it. It's not a massive area, and we've seen tours. I remember Chris G, who's now with SpaceX, but we all know Chris G. We all love Chris G. Took a camera on board one of the retired orbiters. I think it was Endeavour.
It was
And
Endeavour,
it is
STS. Yep.
surprisingly small. It's cramped. It's even more cramped than you may imagine from this drawing here. So, yeah, I can imagine the relief they would have being able to work on what were usually long orbits, long missions as well. I remember, tragically, STS-107 was a very long mission because it had its lab in the back. And, of course, that ended terribly. But it was just basically a different burr to Shuttle's capabilities here. We got a crew here as well. There we go, STS crews, which helps put it on screen rather than having to read out each one of their names. So that's really good. And there's Garrett.
We have two firsts. We have the first non-U.S. citizen to fly on a shuttle mission, and that would be, oh gosh, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation probably, but Ulf Merbold, who was from West Germany. And then you had Byron Lichtenberg, who was one of the first private payload specialists who was with MIT, not NASA.
There we go. Very good. Let's skip through. I know I've got quite a lot of these. Here we go. This is installed in the cargo bay now. So you can get an idea of the size of it. There's the actual module itself. You can see all the European flags because ESA is involved. And that's at KSC. There's another nice drawing. I mean, again, these are not computer renders, not back in that day. And they did some lovely drawings, I must admit. Just different kind of like turn to them. I mean, CGI is amazing, what have you, but just the way this is like probably hand drawn, it's just like really cool. And then back to the patch. I think there we go, back to the patch. So let's go back onto the folder and look for the launch, which is this picture here. Just a
Which,
few pictures of the launch. Yes.
yeah, which the launch, interestingly, they, like you mentioned, we finally see the return of Columbia. It was kind of out of service while they were making some upgrades to it, and one of those was swapping out the main engines because Challenger had the ones that could throttle up to 104.5% of their maximum rated thrust. Columbia originally didn't. So they swapped out those engines for the 104% ones, and the original Columbia engines were then taken, upgraded, and placed on Atlantis.
There we go. Again, I'm going to bring this up. Photographs. You, Sawyer, our team, our other photographers take amazing photographs. This is 1983. To me, that is just like, that could have been, if the shuttle was still flying, and heaven, thank goodness it isn't. And I say that genuinely because they retired honorably and it was only a matter of time before something else was going to go wrong. It's just the way the shuttle was by design, unfortunately. That could have been taken yesterday. It's just a beautiful photograph. It really is. I remember when I was grabbing that, I was thinking, this could go on my wall as well. I've got no space left on my wall thanks to the metal prints. Little store plug there. Lovely little photograph. This is basically just entering the roll program, I'd say. Because you see the arc on a lot of the roll program photographs, but it's a little further up in ascent. This is probably about 10 seconds into launch, if anything. And a nice little photograph there. Just Columbia back at a home base after being put through some conversion for this mission in question. And I think that's lovely. Let's bring up the other folder. This is probably a long folder because I know the mission itself is got a lot involved. This is quite cool. I've got a video as well, which shows a lot more. There's Mr. Young and friend.
Which
Upside
this
down.
mission, by the way, took quite a while to get off the ground because, again, as mentioned, there was the issue with the SRB nozzle, making this the first ever mission to have to be rolled back to the VAB and destacked.
There we go. Nice little Sawyer fact there. This is inside Spacelab, which is a good idea of the amount of equipment they had in there. The video will show it a lot better as well with the extra capacity they had to actually deploy experiments into the environment of space from within the laboratory itself, which was really unique, I'm sure at the time as well. It's still unique to me when I was watching it. I got some food for. I was hoping Jack might be on there because I've got some food
Yum.
things here.
Make
But
it.
there we go. Astro food. It's not as bad as you see in the movies. In the movies, it tends to be like tablets and, things you basically just look very unappetizing. This doesn't look too bad to me, especially as an Englishman, because there's quite a lot of beige involved in here. But
Well, they
yeah.
they improved it over time. The food, that's for sure. It started off not as great, then rehydration became a lot more common. Obviously, you've got a galley now in the shuttle, which helped in terms of the food that they could bring up. Astronauts tend to like spicier foods because all the blood ends up going to their head. So shrimp cocktail turns out apparently one of the favorite astronaut foods, according to some of the people I've talked to. But
There we go. How many astronauts have you spoken to, Sawyer?
107 as of yesterday.
Sawyer Flex.
It grew yesterday by one.
Wow, yeah, of course. That's a good point. You keep adding to the list, don't you? That's amazing.
I try. And the
Wow.
other thing you'll notice in these photos is that you'll typically only see about 3 astronauts at a time, even though this was the largest ever crew to fly into space up to that point with 6 people. Prior to that, the most
Wow.
was 5, as we saw in STS-7 and 8. But they split it so that they could do 24-hour science. They split up into red team and blue team. And this is something that you would typically see during future Spacelab and Space Hab missions. So yeah, John Young, Bob Parker, and Ulf that were on the red team, and then they would do their 12-hour stint, and then Brewster, Owen, and Byron would take the blue team second stint.
There we go. This is the photograph I was waiting to bring up because I knew I collected the photographs before
Oh.
going to Shuttle Sunday. The question is from Six String Simpleton, who asked, why no pressure flight suits? Right, Sawyer. I know it changed, but back before Challenger was lost on 51L, this was pretty much a staple flight suit, wasn't it? What protection, if anything, would they have? I mean, I wonder, do you have any insight into the thinking of why they went with just the flight suits like this, just blue flight suits?
I mean, the flight suits are meant to be semi-fire retardant, so there's,
Yeah.
I guess, a little bit of help there. But mainly, I guess they figured in terms of depressurization, the biggest thing was just to have the oxygen flow. I don't think depressurization was as big of a concern at the time beyond that. Plus, the main thing that was a shuttle selling point was that it was a t-shirt environment, that you didn't need to be suited up the whole time. You could kind of, you know, get to the mission critical points and then just hang out in a t-shirt and shorts and be fine.
Yeah. By the way, quick thanks to Rebecca. I see store messages and it's relevant to this show. I look forward to Shuttle Sunday so much. Thank you. And let's bring up and see if it comes up. I don't know if it'll work on this kind of stream, but we'll soon find out if the actual there it does. Yeah, you got the Flight 4 patch. This is cool. Right, I like this, Sawyer. This is somebody who's got the Flight 4 patch for Starship watching a shuttle show. And I always say, Sawyer, I go on about it monotonously, where I say Starship is everything. I say everything, which is probably too generalized. Everything what shuttle wanted it to be. And but what I mean by that is rapid reusability. It was never going to be full reusability on a shuttle because we knew the external tank was not going to get reused. The SRBs were brought back to port, but then taken apart by the casings. But the orbiter was, obviously. And there's a lot of maintenance between the two. There's so many synergies. Even Elon's recent tweet about the TPS, about losing a tile in a bad area would be, not survivable. The shuttle lost tiles, but luckily, apart from 107, of course, they would just about get through it. There was the Atlantis mission. I've met the name, the actual STS mission. Thank you, Sawyer. Where they lost a lot of TPS tiles, and one of them in a very critical area. But thankfully, they had some internal protection. By luck, wasn't it? It was basically just a plate which basically did not burn through. Otherwise, that would have been a bad story.
In that shuttle near misses video, which should be coming out sooner than later, that it's in there. And I remember I was editing that one, so I pulled the pictures for it, and just seeing that again for STS-27 going 3 or 4 tiles to the left, and there goes the orbiter.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Really is. I mean, this is what the video I'm looking forward to the most, probably coming up as far as shuttle goes, because there are many stories people may not know. Everyone knows about the 2 disasters. Let's face it, and rightly so. But they dodged a bullet a few times, to say the least. And that's why, even as a big shuttle fan, sorry, back me up on this. As a big shuttle fan, would you still want it flying today? I'm going to say no.
I mean, would I want it? Yes. Would it be the smart thing? No.
There you go. That's probably a better answer. There we go. Thank you, Sawyer. Right, let's quickly move through these pictures because we're talking about shuttle. We'll go over time as we always do. There's a crew. We're talking about the largest crew to date so far, and there is the crew all in one photograph. That's a cool photograph. There we go. The flight deck before the glass cockpit. Still the old screens. The glass cockpit made it look very futuristic for the time, by the way. But even back then, it's still an impressive set of arrays and knobs and levers and what have you. But that was the old design of the cockpit. They all got converted to the glass cockpit.
The old CRTs.
There's me with my speech at the UK meetup. Thought you'd appreciate that, Sawyer. When I brought it up, I'm cheating because I actually thought about that. I was just bringing a picture. I thought I mentioned that on this. But that is really cool.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that I didn't come up with some jokes ahead of time.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. We're going to play a video. Let's see if this plays, because I know when I bring up 2 videos, I'll mute myself. Here we go.
This is your standard engine light off. And it sure is, it's different in one respect. The engine's come up to speed. You feel that noise in the cockpit quite clearly. It's, things are shaking, mostly your knees. The bolts blow right here, and this is a beautiful shot right here. It's one of the prettiest liftoff shots I've ever seen. It clears the tower, and I always say it comes very close to the edge of this thing here, but it misses it every time, so I guess that's all right. One thing that was different on our ascent was our 15 degree per second roll rate. It's a real high roll rate. We rolled at to 135 degrees. You wanted to get up thing pointed in the right direction before you had to encounter load relief. And of course it rolls around and completes that roll within, before it's starting to do 300 knots. Our max dynamic pressure equivalent airspeed, for as an example, 466 knots. This is taken from the chase plane and she's starting to climb straight up. They'll defocus and refocus this thing and you can watch it go supersonic. Look at those shocks come off there. The vibration and the noise picks up when you go through dynamic pressure in a way that I don't remember on STS-1, but because the seats were pinned down, there's a lot less vibration. A lot less, and it was really a nice ride. Anything to that, Brewster?
Well, it really put you back in the seat right away. It kind of surprised me. The G's are on you real fast. Here's a good shot of the SRB SEP, and when that happened, we got a lot of material over our front windshield that kind of surprised us a little bit, but you could see through it later on when you needed to. We finally made it to orbit and opened up the payload bay doors and deployed the radiators and put out the KU band antenna, and we were ready to operate in a really short time. And this gives you an idea how easy it is to get around in there. You just float in and out of the seat, and this is a configuration on orbit with our little computer that told us where we were in the world, and one CRT running most of the time, and alone on the flight deck while the other guys are busy doing science. And John's taking pictures out the window there with a 35 millimeter camera and a 105 millimeter lens on it that we borrowed from the guys in back. And once we got the hatch open, the science crew started heading back to the Spacelab to crank it up, and they'll tell you about that.
There we are, we're just floating back to open up the Spacelab hatch and now enter the Spacelab for the first time. And it was just the way we left it on the ground. Not a thing had come apart, and it looked almost like home, just like our trainers would have been over at the Marshall Space Flight Center in the payload crew training area. And felt very, very comfortable moving on in here and beginning to activate the Spacelab. Have a few valves to throw and various pieces of equipment to turn on. And let's see. And so we've now in the process of closing it back up, putting the lower hatch, the inner hatch, back onto the scientific airlock. And then after that's completed, we would open the outside hatch and extend the experiments on into space. It's very easy to move that lower hatch around, inner hatch, in weightlessness, much better than it is on the ground. Here's a view showing the outside hatch now opening up to expose that 1 meter diameter chamber. And after the outer hatch is laid back, fully 180 degrees, then we'll see the experiment table with the experiments on it, then cranked out into space. And the first thing that we're extending here is the diagnostic package for the Japanese experiment, and that can then be exposed to the plasma directly out into the environment and measure what's going on. Here's just a brief glimpse showing ham radio or amateur radio operations. Looking out.
It's driven by a difference in surface tension. That is another experiment. See that little tank? It is partly filled with silicone oil, and it is used as a model for rocket tanks to find out how the liquid behaves inside a tank. That is a simple sphere, just water sphere, and I'm pinching a little injection needle in it, and I'm trying to put an air bubble inside the water bubble and see how it moves inside, and you can also create all sorts of oscillations. It's very spectacular.
And here's the entry join up. Charlie Justice in his chase plane is joining up. He's getting better and better at it. And it's a beautiful day out there at Edwards. We could see the lake bed from 60 miles out and had no doubt about where we're going and what we're doing on the flying end of it. Because of our problems, we'd been up for a long time. Brewster had been up about 14 and a half, 15 hours. I'd been up about 20 and a half hours, I think. And even so, because we've had a lot of practice doing this kind of thing, it just seemed like old home week, getting back there and shooting those approaches, shooting that approach. See the shallow glide slope? We're on a 17-degree short, 17-degree glide slope. It's really a shallow glide slope. It's hard to believe that the orbiter right there weighs almost 110 tons, but it does. And it's coming down and just working beautifully. The orbiter has a lot more precision, crisp handling qualities in the real vehicle than we've been able to do in some of our simulators, because would take a really super actuator to make those crisp motions. And it's very straightforward. We're a little low on energy, so Brewster held the gear down to about 250 feet. But the gear still comes down, locks in about 5 seconds, 6 seconds. And the ground effect model, we've never really, it's tough to simulate it just properly, but the ground effect model really cushions this baby with this big delta wing. It just cushions it beautifully right into landing there. It looks like about a 12-degree angle of attack and straightforward landing and rollout. I think the lake bed must have been still wet a little bit because we really decelerated rapidly. We weren't using very much brakes, and we rolled a stop 10,200 feet from the threshold, which with that big payload would at least show us something about our capability into abort fields around the world, which are a little shorter. If you look real close, you can see a little bitty nose wheel steering test in there somewhere. It's kind of hard to see from this angle. Yeah, but it's there. It sure is a delightful flying machine, start to finish. And like I say, it weighs quite a bit, and we proved the capability to bring back on that mission over 21 tons of payload in vehicles like the Discovery. We also looked at a new flexibility and coming in over the poles almost. We're over the Aleutians and Sakhalin Island in that area. Now here you see 6 men getting off a spaceship after 10 days in space. They haven't had a bath. You might say this is 6 dirty old men, but and they probably really are. Looking forward to a shower. And I think
I like that. Basically, you got someone as serious and like really focused as John Young, and he's talking about the orbiter like this baby and praising the vehicle. He did that quite a lot. I think he described STS-1 Columbia after STS-1 saying this is the world's greatest electric flying machine. Do you want me to take you into the hangar, Joe? And thinking, well, dust it down first. They do have that. We talked about in a previous Shuttle Sunday. They do have that, love of the vehicle that I think is important because it means, they're going to care about it more, and that helps make sure that nothing's missed that could have been missed. Maybe they didn't care if it was a monotonous thing to do. So I like little things like that, little Easter eggs in these videos where the crew are just talking as if they would to you in a pub or something like that. It really is a nice little soundbite, shall we say.
Yeah, just a little shallow 17-degree angle of attack, yeah.
Yeah.
Which,
Unbelievable. Right.
by the way, during that landing, 2 of the 3 APUs were on fire.
Oh, God. Hang on,
Slight
let's see if I
issue
can-
there with the auxiliary power units. Apparently, there was a hydrazine leak, it caught fire, and thankfully it landed safely, and burnt itself out, but it destroyed the APU compartment pretty badly.
Because you do normally see, especially on night landings, you do see what looks like dragon fire coming out the back, which is the APU vents, and that's normal. That's fine. I'll find the example on future Shuttle Sundays, but there's a few videos where it really is belching fire out of there, and that does look terrible, but to the uninitiated at least. But it is just the APU venting, and you see it more on night landings.
Yeah, this one, it actually did really catch fire, and
Yeah.
almost didn't make it back either because of an issue with the onboard computers. So they were doing one of their RCS thrusts prior to re-entry, and turns out one of the main computers just completely crashed, followed a few minutes later by one of the second computers of 3 also crashing. Thankfully, they rebooted both of them, but basically, John Young had said later that had they activated the backup flight software, they probably would have lost the vehicle.
Apparently, chat is now saying you need more commands, as well as Sawyer Pun and Sawyer Flex. We need Sawyer Fact, so I will make that happen. Sawyer's got a fact you may not know about. Will be the command option there when we bring it out. So I'll find it somehow. But yeah, let's take a few questions before we end because we've gone over time. But we're always going to go over time. So talking about Shuttle. Apocalypse Cow, first of all, gifted 5 team memberships. Danger Moo, thank you as always. You do it on every stream. You don't have to, but it is appreciated, and I'll make sure it's read out because that is really cool. I'm going to go through speedrun some questions because there's not many people in these live streams. because it's not like a Starship stream where there's like thousands and thousands in. And that's fine by me, but that's why we don't do it for the numbers. We do it because we want to do it and we think it's valuable. But that means we can answer nearly everybody's question here. So I'm going to go through them. Westy the Third asks, why did it hold at T-minus 9 minutes? So we're talking about a 3-day countdown for Space Shuttle program. They had hold points. The big one was T-minus 9 minutes where they held, and then it came out of the count. It was game time, wasn't it, Sawyer?
Yeah. After that, it was essentially getting into, the final part of the countdown. So this was their last chance to check everything, make sure they were good to go before they really got into the nitty gritty of it. That's where you would hear the famous go no go polls. Would be the 9-minute hold.
Absolutely. V2 Mix, you've got like initials and numbers, so I'm just going to basically make it a name for you on your behalf. Some OV.
That's a ham radio call sign actually, and which is appropriate given that Owen Garriott became the first person to use ham radio in space on this mission.
There we go. Sawyer
As
fact.
said from a fellow ham radio operator himself, myself,
We need the command.
KC2VRX.
Yeah, we still need the command Sawyer Flex. I'm going to make it Sawyer Fax. Sorry, Sawyer Fact. That's it. There we go. I'll make that command happen afterwards. The question is, some of the orbiters had a mid-deck airlock and others had external one, I think.
I believe that the later adaptations for the upper ones were for dockings to Mir and ISS. Whereas the other one was mainly the way for them to go either into the payload itself. During Hubble repair, they used the horizontal one as well, just like they do for Spacelab and Space Hab missions.
That's the thing I was going to bring up there as well, is that you needed an airlock for this, even if it wasn't an EVA on that mission, because, for example, if the cargo bay doors had not closed, the play doors had not closed before re-entry, you had to get them closed. So you probably need an emergency EVA to get some spacewalk out there to physically close the doors, which would have been doable because they're not all that heavy in space, as you can imagine, because it's microgravity. So that's how they can do it. So that would be an example of an airlock as well on the orbiter from the mid-deck area where they could egress the vehicle to do that work. M. Smith asks, they had the space. Why wasn't Spacelab larger? So this is good. We got it on screen right now. This is the title screen, but you can see there they had the space at the back. Did he ever consider a Spacelab XL, Sawyer?
I mean, that's kind of where they went to the improved space habs later in the future, but the main thing is mass. I mean, you even heard John Young talking about it when they were landings. They were surprised that they stopped as short as they did with such a heavy payload. So it's not so much the area that you have the issue with, but the mass of everything. So,
very good.
And then also keeping the center of gravity and all that nice and helpful for landing and things like that. Just in terms of orbital, basically vehicle handling, they kind of optimized it for that. And they still got a lot done in that little space.
Yep, COG, and obviously, as was mentioned on that video, they were talking about the amount of tonnage they were bringing back down for landing. There is limits to that, so they couldn't really go full belt with what they were bringing back down for the landing part of the mission, so that was important as well. But it certainly was very capable, an extra amount of capability brought to the Space Shuttle's overall mission objectives, because there's more, as you'll see in future Sundays, there's a lot more missions of varying types coming up, not least the interplanetary ones, literally interplanetary ones, missions where they were launching these proper space probes from the back of a space shuttle, which was really cool. GeoHound asks, can we have Skylab Sunday as well, please? So Skylab is the one launched on Saturn V's, the post-Apollo missions. I've done various Saturn Saturdays with photographs of the modified vehicle, especially with the 1B, with the crew on the alternative pad on its milk stool. I don't know if we've got enough. We might have enough to do at least one. Let's put that on the back burner as a good suggestion and see if we've got enough resources to show on a stream like this, because for sure we've got resources coming out of our ears, VRL2 and what have you. So that was never going to be a problem for the Space Shuttle program. But for the older missions like Apollo and Saturn and what have you, that becomes more just raking from public resources more than anything else. We have got L2 resources on those missions, but probably not enough for a show. Oh, leave it with me. I'll have a think.
Plus, I'd have a lot more research to do. Shuttle's a little more off the top of the head.
It literally would be a lot more research because this is going back way. I'm a child of Shuttle myself, and I'm sure you are, sorry, as well. It's going back before our time now. Which is why it's exciting with Starship, because this is like the big rockets now, SLS and Starship, the big rockets we never got to see live, and because it was before our time. Now we're going to see the big rockets, and we have seen the big rockets because it's launched 3 times. Bideford, I so enjoyed this today. Thank you, Bideford. You're one of our regulars as well. It's just nice of you to mention that, so I thought I'd read it out. Astro Joe, who was looking forward to it, to the point that I was being asked several times if we were still doing it. Yes, we are doing it because we've just done it. Thank you for that. I don't think anyone will complain if we have overtime for STS-9. That was before I was mentioning we might go over time. We have gone over time, but I'm glad people are happy we have as well. The audience has stayed with us, by the way. I was waiting for the numbers to go down, and the audience has stayed with us, so thank you for enjoying that. Pauline Brook asks, when did they start using parachutes to help with the braking on landing? So that was the drag chute on the back of the rudder speed brake. When did that come into effect, Sawyer?
That was 1990 was when they first started using that to help slow it down. It was meant to basically help ease the load on the brakes because those things got very hot, and was also meant to then be able to use shorter runways if needed. Like John was talking about there again in the video, if they needed to do an abort somewhere down the line on a shorter runway, they technically could. So that goes back to 1990, and also shout out to someone else who used to work here at NSF that gave me a piece of the reefing line from one of the drogue chutes for STS-130. So yes, I
Very
do have a
nice.
piece of the. If anyone ever wondered what that random rope was that was in my background, that's a piece of the line from one of the shuttle drag chutes, basically.
Right, next time, sorry, you're on a like a flame trench or something like that, and you got your background on the view. We're gonna point that out because that's really cool. Because your background is very, very, very impressive. I must admit, I do find myself having a little poke around your room, which is probably a bit rude, but there we go.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, that sounded wrong when it came out. Just for some reason, I don't know why. Anyway, Bob Fillmore, by the way, thank you for this. You just said thanks for this shuttle series, lots of memories. Well, I appreciate that and your support. That is really nice for you to say that because we do it for fun. It is something I always wanted to do. It wasn't because we might think we get some big numbers for anything like that. Never anything like that. In fact, a lot of our streams are done because we think it would be good for our audience, not because, well, that one will do big numbers, that one will do big super chats. We never thought that way. It's not the way to think for a start because that would send you down the wrong path. You could easily get shoved into a direction you don't want to go. And we don't want to do that. So that's why we do these. And it's really cool. I'm glad you enjoy it. If one person enjoyed it, that's worthwhile. Many people have enjoyed it, so that's really cool. So on that bombshell, I think we should come to the end of this series. We've got the next Shuttle Sunday to come. We've got so many missions to cover. There's going to be multiple Shuttle Sundays to come. Trust me, we've not even scratched the surface, shall we say. But I just want to personally thank Sawyer for being on this. Thank you, Sawyer.
You're welcome. This is the last of the normal numbered missions for quite a while, too.
Yeah,
so
I know.
I hope you enjoyed the numbers making sense, because they're not going to for a little bit after this.
Yes, it goes bonkers after this now, unfortunately. They completely changed the mission numbers. It's not STS-10 next, put it that way. So it's like, we're just going to go through to like 41Cs and things like that soon. So look forward to that because it'll get confusing. We might actually put a little brackets of what mission it was, like the 12th mission and things like that as we go forward, just so people keep a good thing for the series because the series will be in order then and then everyone will know where they're looking. Anyway, enough of me rambling. Thanks also to Jay in the background for making sure everything is running smoothly as it did. The audio and the video came through, everything came through out, so that was really cool. Thank you for doing that, Jay. And right, we're going to send you off to watch views of a chopstick for the Mechazilla system for Tower 2 at Starbase. How's that for a transition? It really is. We're going from the 1980s and Space Shuttle back to Space Coast Live, which is showing the 2 chopstick arms for the Mechazilla system on a second tower at Starbase for the Starship program in South Texas. That's weird in any way you say it, but that's what's happening, and that's where we're in the new era. So until next time we speak to you, thanks for joining in on this one, and goodbye for now. Bye-bye.